Thank you all for being here. For any of you that don't know who I am, I'm Erica Smart. I'm the interim general manager. Normally, I'm the program and development manager. Right now, I'm doing all kinds of different things because that's just how it goes sometimes. Today, we also have Sarah and Leanne. They're sitting together in one office there. They're animal care supervisors. And we also have Meg and Carol, our volunteer coordinator, and Jill. They're sharing a screen there as well. Jill is our client service supervisor. I don't know if we have any other staff on the call today, but some people were thinking about jumping on, so they might be on here too. So I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to go through that is based off of a really great conversation that kind of this staff group here had, our leadership team had last week following an incident that occurred between a volunteer and a staff member where I know I'll just address the elephant in the room, which is that the rumor that I heard going around is that we fired a volunteer because they disagreed with us. And that's absolutely not the case. We want to talk with volunteers about the very difficult euthanasia decisions that our team has to make. And the team that's making these decisions are all here on this call right now. We are always talking with each other about the different cases and kind of using a holistic approach to figure out if an animal is adoptable or not. So while all this information that I'm going to share with you, it's not new information, and it's probably things that you've heard from one of us one time or another, it is new for us to kind of put it all in writing. And this was something that I think we all felt was helpful. And ultimately, I also created a graphic that I'll share at the very end of the presentation that we plan on posting in different public areas, just as a reminder, and also for the fact that we have a lot of volunteers. Our records kind of show that we have over 600 volunteers, even though I know it doesn't always feel that way when we're short on staff or on volunteer shifts. But we do have a lot of folks that are out there, and we want to make sure that they get this information as well, because a lot of it we do talk about in new volunteer orientation, but then sometimes we never get the opportunity to talk about it again, or if volunteers don't come to Let's Talk Tales Live or ask questions, then they might just kind of fall off of our radar if they don't have questions about euthanasia decisions. And they're tough, and sometimes it's tough to ask those questions. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I have two screens, and I have to put you guys on my second screen here. So if I'm looking that direction, I apologize. That's what's going on. So we're going to talk about adoptability of shelter animals. I'm going to go over just in general what it means to be an open admission shelter, in general, what makes an animal adoptable. But we also want to talk about kind of the bigger picture things that we as a team are still trying to wrap our mind around what this means for the shelter, but length of stay and capacity for care. I'm going to try to get through these huge topics as quickly as possible so that Leanne and Sarah can have some time to talk about recent decisions, and so that you guys can ask any questions that you might have as well. Because ultimately, that's what we want this to be, is an open forum. We just, like I said, had this really great meeting where we talked about all these things about open admission sheltering and what this looks like for us, that we really wanted to share this with you. So with that being said, an open admission shelter is a reflection of the community, and this is something that really helped me better understand the role the shelter plays. I'm from the Central Valley, grew up in Modesto area, and growing up going to the animal shelter, it was like a very traditional pound, and animals had a euthanasia date on their kennel, regardless of their adoptability, which is not putting that shelter to shame or anything like that. That is a reflection of that community. There isn't a mandatory spay and neuter ordinance. There aren't certain laws and regulations in place that we have here in Santa Cruz that ultimately decrease our annual intake numbers. But really what this means is that we can only provide the service based on what we're getting back from the community, right? So since we never turn any animal away, regardless of the circumstance, we're going to work with animals that are just not safe for us to adopt out. And what I mean by safe is so many different things. Words like safe and resources are things that I'll probably say multiple times. So just to give you an idea of what I mean by that is safe for themselves, social. They enjoy being around people. They enjoy being around other animals. They enjoy being here. They're not miserable or having anxiety in their kennel. They are able to socialize with you all as volunteers, as well as our staff. And of course, we need them to be safe for the general public. We also, when we're doing animal evaluations, take into consideration, especially with our dogs, that our community is a very dog-friendly place. Unless you're looking for rental housing, then it's not. But in general, it's a dog-friendly place. And our dogs go out. They go out for walks on Westcliff, and people want to take them to the beach. All these things we have to take into consideration when we're talking about what makes an animal adoptable here. But regardless of that, we take in animals no matter the circumstance, and we feel like that is our role as the only open admission shelter here in the county. And part of the reason that I bring this up, even though this is like bare bones, I know you all know this, is that our neighboring jurisdictions are ultimately changing their policies, which is creating an issue for us, for our shelter, but it also is going to have much larger ramifications that we don't even know what those are at this point in time, and we won't really know for probably a few years. But ultimately, we have other jurisdictions like in Santa Clara County, as well as in Monterey, that are turning away animals. They're switching from open admission to being limited intake, managed intake, which basically means if you have 5 kennels available and 10 animals come in that day, you're going to have to triage and pick which animals you're going to give a kennel to. That's something that they're doing because they want to ultimately control their statistics and not have to euthanize animals. They're specifically doing this with owner surrendered animals. Stray animals they do have to take in. But this has resulted in one of the shelters in that area has been telling people to just bring owner surrender animals to us, even if they are out of county. And we have definitely reached over 300 animals in the last year that have been surrendered to us from outside of the county, which is why I bring all this up, because it is something that is having this ripple effect and impacting our shelter population overall. And when we talk about this, we have to talk about the no-kill movement and what that really means. And for us, sorry, I'm getting people pinging me to get into this lobby, even though I turned that off. Weird. When we talk about the no-kill movement, for us, it is a compelling tagline that encourages fundraising. For us, it feels degrading. It degrades the work that we do here at the shelter. And it really focuses on those statistics where we can't control what comes in. We have zero control over what animal is going to walk through the doors. No-kill animal shelters have that control because they don't have to ever see an animal that might have a behavior or medical issue that would need them to be, that they might be euthanized for. With that being said, though, the no-kill movement, the statistic is a 90% live release rate, which means 10% of the animals could still ultimately be euthanized for one of those things that I was just talking about, behavior or medical. But there are some rescue organizations that believe that it's better to warehouse highly aggressive animals and keep them alive forever. And for us, that's just not a reality, and we don't think that's fair. This is a slide that I always show, or was created for volunteer orientation, because as you all know, people always get us confused with the SPCA, and we love them. They're great partners, which I think we can have a moment of celebration that Romeo just went to SPCA, which is amazing. I know, we're so happy for him. And
they took Katrin. Sorry, Katrin.
Oh, Katrin. I was like, who's talking? I couldn't see. And right. Katrin, amazing. So we have the ultimate goal of we're all trying to help animals, but they are a nonprofit organization. They're limited admission, and they get to choose and handpick what animals they take. So they're not taking animals that are coming off the street, owner surrender. They're not seeing animals that have bit people, attacked other animals, or are deathly ill. Whereas for us, we're seeing all those plus more. We're dealing with all the lost and found, any deceased animals, humane investigation, animal control. But the great thing is that because we are a reflection of our community supports our shelter so much that we're able to add in those progressive programs, the Healthy Pets for All pop-up vet clinics, pre-pandemic and nationwide veterinary shortage. Obviously, our Planned Pethood program, low cost and free spay and neuter, which hopefully we'll get to bring back someday soon. But we get to do all these extra things because of our community, because Santa Cruz is so supportive. And our volunteer program is absolutely a reflection of that. So with that being said, our mission with adopting out animals is this, to adopt out safe, social, and healthy companion animals that are manageable in the average home. Let's see what that means, what I have here on my next slide. So who's making these decisions? Who decides if an animal is adoptable or not, and if they're safe and social and those things that I just talked about? These are our wonderful people who are making those decisions, Sarah, Leanne, and Jill. I'm not going to read through all these qualifications because that would take me a ton of time, but I just want you guys to know that we have highly skilled and trained staff that are making these very tough decisions, and there is not a single euthanasia decision that one is either made by one person or two that is made without our hearts being in this. It is so difficult, and I had thought about all these different stories that I could share to talk about euthanasia, and for me it's easier to talk about my personal experiences. Growing up on a farm, we had lots of different animals that needed to be euthanized over the years. But when I started at the shelter, I remember people saying to me, oh my gosh, how are you going to work at a place that euthanizes animals every day? That's going to be so hard. And I was like, yeah, it probably will be, but I'm not going to be the one doing it, so I don't need to worry about it. And after a few months of working with the shelter and working with this team, I knew that I needed to be EBI certified because I wanted to have a better understanding of what our staff goes through, because it's so emotional. And really what triggered that for me was that Sarah actually helped euthanize my mom's cat here at the shelter. And I was so struck by her empathy and how professional she handled the situation and explained to us the process and what she was doing. And it's just like, if I talk too much about it, I will start crying about it, because there's just been so many cases for all of us that are just so emotional. And we do take the time, especially with some of these really difficult decisions, like animals that are adoptable for a while, that then something happens and we have to change what our original evaluation was because of a bite or because of a different behavior or an unknown medical thing that comes up, and we have to change what our decision was. Those are tough. There's been many dogs that I've driven to Burger King for and gotten ice cream and French fries for, and we sit and hang out with them and cry, and it sucks. So I just want everyone to understand that I know everyone does, but it's just in a highly emotional environment, I think it's just easy for some of these things to look like, oh, because we do this every day, that we're not sensitive to what's going on. And we are highly sensitive to these situations, and they impact us every day. Compassion fatigue is real, and I know our volunteers feel that too, and I know you guys feel that when we feel that and when we get stressed and emotional about this. So I know it's full circle, which is why I want to be transparent about it and try to paint that picture. So in this wonderful meeting that I keep referencing, these are some things that we talked about what makes an animal adoptable. And ultimately, we had a whiteboard and we were just writing these things down kind of as they came to our mind of when we're going through an adoption, or excuse me, an evaluation process, what are we looking for? Ultimately, it's pretty holistic. We're looking at so many different things. So behavior, medical, overall quality of life. Can we handle them for vet care? Their history. If they're owner surrendered, we actually get a pretty substantial amount of information from the owner through our owner surrender behavioral evaluation form that they fill out, which is great. We also are looking at their kennel presence, and this isn't just like if they're barking and growling at adopters when they're walking by. This is if they're scared or fearful or hurting themselves, injuring themselves in the kennel because of their anxiety, spinning, different things like that. Obviously, staff and volunteer observations play a role in this. Litter box habits for our cat friends. General public safety, and then last but not least, they enjoy being social. They're not so terrified and fearful of people and of this environment that they can handle it. Okay, so what happens while animals are here? We are observing their medical and behavior during their hold period. We can start doing our evaluation process before they become our property, but this all just depends on our resources. And there's the word again, so how much time we have per our staff. So some days are better than others. Some days we're able to accomplish more. Then other days we have ringworm and we have to dip every cat in the building like we have a couple weeks ago. So it just kind of depends. That's a big part of an open emission animal shelter is we have to take things as they come in and deal with them as we're faced with them, which often leaves with lots of interesting situations. So I wanted to give a couple examples. These two, this slide and the next one are kind of an example of what a behavior evaluation might look like for a cat and then for a dog. This cat is actually a cat that was adopted from us. The dog photo is not a real dog, so they're both written very general so that we can hopefully kind of apply them to other ones. So for this cat, he's friendly, social, he enjoys being pet and being with people. For medical, we're observing that he was not weight bearing on that leg, he was limping. And then information from the RP, the reporting party, we observed that he had been hit by a car. So we kind of knew what was going on. So based on the combination of this information, because this was such a sweet and young and overall healthy cat other than that leg, we amputated the leg and ultimately made him available for adoption. We did actually get a recent photo from this cat and he's doing great in his new home. And this is my fake behavior eval dog for this. So giving us some nice little whale eyes there, looking fearful. So behavior observed in the shelter, for example, might be fearful of people, reactive towards other dogs, but just in general, unpredictable behavior. And this is something that I'd love for Sarah or Jill or Leanne to talk about later, is that this unpredictable behavior category is where things get tricky for us during evaluation processes, because if this dog, let's say, was maybe friendly with one dog or neutral, didn't really care but didn't want to play with the dog, and then trying to go after another dog, it becomes highly dangerous for us to make that animal available for adoption. So as far as medical goes, because of the fearful behavior, we're not able to observe any medical. The owner surrendered and ultimately reported to us that they got this dog as a puppy, left it in the backyard, and didn't do a whole lot with it. So we know it's under socialized. So based on all of this, that medical and behavior, we would reach out to our list of placement partners, but I can tell you that everyone is full. The amount of emails that we are getting from our California animal welfare groups on a daily basis of other shelters and rescue groups being overrun, overwhelmed, understaffed is it's very sad. So most likely there would not be a placement for this dog and the outcome would be humane euthanasia. Okay. So I pulled this out of ASPCA article, 5 Freedoms, and this kind of talks, goes hand in hand with what I'm going to talk about next with length of stay and capacity for care, that these are the things that we're thinking about when an animal is in our care. Freedom from hunger and thirst, obviously, that's such a bare necessity, but freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain or injury or disease, freedom to express normal behavior, and freedom from fear and distress. These are all the things that we're thinking about when we're going through that evaluation process and thinking about what makes an animal adoptable. And I think this is kind of helpful in keeping in mind some of our cases where an animal has been adoptable, but maybe remained in our care for a longer period of time and ultimately has just kind of lost it in the shelter environment, which is something that happens and it's incredibly sad. And we do what we can to get animals out into foster homes, but sometimes it's difficult, and especially for our large breed dogs, it's difficult to get them into foster homes. And ultimately, we want them to have an appropriate environment. We want them to be comfortable. We don't want them to be experiencing such bad anxiety that we're not able to meet these needs. So length of stay, what that means is very simple, the number of days that an animal is ultimately in a kennel here at the shelter. This also does relate to our foster homes, but with our foster homes, we can be a little bit more flexible because it's not requiring as much staff time for us to manage those animals. So in our meeting, we talked about that our ideal timeline for this is about 2 weeks, which sounds amazing. If every animal could get adopted after 2 weeks, that would be an ideal circumstance. But these are our current stats. I just pulled them on the 3rd. So we've got a long way to go to get to that goal. It's a great goal. And if we could even cut this in half, that would be incredible. And the reason I'm sharing this with you all is because I do think it ties so much into euthanasia decisions and just how difficult these decisions are, because it isn't fair for a dog to sit in a kennel here for 35 days. And we expect that they're going to be the same super social, ready to go into a home dog that they were when we first started that time frame. And there's certain things that we can do on our end to try to decrease this. I'm not saying that it's because we need to put a timeline and euthanize an animal after it's been in a kennel a certain amount of time. It's not what I'm saying. It's more of we need to keep this in mind when we're thinking about different ways that we can get animals out, either with rescue, placement partners, different things that we can do for them while they are in our care, like enrichment and different things like that. But there's other ideas out there as well. And just so you know, too, all this information, not our statistics, but information on length of stay and capacity for care and that past slide that I showed, they have all this information on the UC Davis Shelter Veterinary Medicine webpage that has tons of information. They have different calculators and things that you can use to ultimately determine how many animals you should even have in the shelter. But that's not what we're trying to do right now. I just want to share this to kind of give us this big picture idea of what's going on currently at the shelter with our animals. I also want to add, which I didn't do this before this meeting, Sarah had brought up wanting to try to compare this to the previous year or pre-pandemic, because the types of animals that we're getting in at the shelter are so different than they were during the pandemic. If you're on this call and you were volunteering during the pandemic, you probably remember that we had hardly any animals here. It was kind of crazy. There'd be a line out the door if we had any highly adoptable animal. You'd walk in and there'd just be so many people waiting to adopt that dog. And now it's just totally different. It's not the situation that we're in. And the types of owner surrenders, especially for dogs that we're getting in, are dogs that have not been well socialized or have other behavioral issues. And that's one of the big reasons they're even being surrendered, which kind of takes us back to that mission statement, right? That we need to be adopting out animals, or we want to be adopting out animals that are manageable in the average home. So we have to really take into consideration what those behaviors look like and what can be managed. And then I also pulled this from our 2021 stats. All this stuff, we have our statistics posted every other month with our board reports, and you can find them on our website. This is our current live release rate. So 84% is pretty amazing for a municipal county shelter that has zero control over what animals are coming in. And I also am pointing this out because, to me, I think this is probably one of the big reasons why every time we have to make a very difficult euthanasia decision, it's so alarming, because we technically, according to this, we don't have to make those decisions as much as maybe it feels like. So what does length of stay mean for staff time? According to UC Davis, they say that for a healthy animal like that kitten, it'd be about 15 minutes per day. For medical cases, 35 minutes per day. And similarly with our small friends like this rat, it would be 15 minutes per day, which sounds well and fine. Tina, there's one of your kittens. I love that photo, so cute. I just kind of pulled these numbers out of the air. This is not based on currently what's in here, but as you can see, it gets pretty unrealistic pretty quickly for what we're able to do if we're talking about that at 15 minutes per day for a healthy animal and 35 minutes per day for a medical case. That is a ton of time, and obviously not enough time that we can treat all these cases. So we have to determine what we can do. And of course, volunteers help us significantly with this. That 15 minutes per day is like the cleaning and feeding. So that doesn't account for all the hours that our volunteers are giving that are socializing and caring for the animals outside of that. So capacity for care is defined by UC Davis as meeting the needs of every animal admitted to a shelter, regardless of how they came in, when they came in, or their age, health status, and their personality. So we talked about what we think that could look like here, which again, this is big picture goals that we have. For cats, this looks like possibly half of the kennels in each room are open and available for cats coming in. For dogs, we decided that we would like to be able to have thoughtful placement throughout the kennels so that we could maybe have every other kennel, or at least be able to move dogs around so that they're not facing each other and barking at each other all day long, causing more stress for all the animals in our care ultimately. Now, these are obviously dreams and goals, and somewhere down the line when we have a new general manager, which hopefully will be soon, which it won't be me. I did not apply for it. So hopefully it'll be someone awesome who has lots of experience with this that can guide the team through this, because these are like the big hot topic issues right now in animal welfare. And these are things, length of stay and capacity for care, are terms that we have thrown around for as long as I've been here, but we've never really sat down and mapped out what that looks like for us, which is why we did that and why we wanted to talk about it with you all. So the role that volunteers play at the shelter is providing socialization to shelter pets to ultimately enrich their lives while they're in our care. And I know that there's a lot of stress, especially with the dogs, surrounding getting them in and out of the kennel and how many times per day and different things like that. And we just appreciate anything that volunteers are able to give to the shelter. I do see our shelter as a place that ultimately sets the standard for how animal care could be in the municipal county shelter world. We operate so much more similarly to a private organization, except for the fact that we have no control of what comes in. So we have to deal with all those difficult decisions as well. But our volunteer program is just amazing, and you guys do so much to help the animals in our care. The biggest part about this, and the reason that we're having this presentation today, is ultimately a reaction to a really hostile situation that took place last week because of a decision that was made, right? A volunteer was not fired because they disagreed with us. We want you to ask questions, but I do know that if you don't ask questions when they first come up and you start to let them pile up as different difficult decisions are made, it's going to make it very difficult for that question to be effectively communicated and in a professional way. We want our volunteer program to be, a casual environment where you can come and just ask any of these people questions, but we also want it to be professional. I received emails over the last couple weeks that have ruined my time away from the shelter, because I am receiving emails that are calling my friends and staff members killers, and I don't like that. And I know that I'm most likely preaching to the choir and that I don't have anyone on this call that feels that way. I'm just sharing it because we already are in such a difficult time in our world, and a difficult time here at the shelter, such a transitional time, that to have that type of behavior going on is just so disheartening to me. What we do here is so important for the community, and we couldn't do it without all of our staff as well as all of our volunteers. So I appreciate you all being on this call and listening to this presentation, and I hope that you feel comfortable to ask questions to any of our team members anytime that you have them. We want to talk about these difficult decisions. Last but not least, before I let someone else jump in here, this is the graphic that I made based off of the conversation that we had on what makes an animal adoptable at the shelter. And this is something that we are going to print out and have available for staff and volunteers. And we're talking about potentially even having it available for the general public, because we want people to have a clear understanding. We are transparent with all the decisions that we're making. We're not wanting to try to hide anything. We want people to understand that what we're doing is a reflection of the community, that when we get in an animal that is not an adoption candidate, we are just having to clean up the mess. We are having to pick up the pieces where the community has left us. We are the last resort for animals in our community. And we try to work with as many as we can, but ultimately we're not a rehabilitation center. We're not a private rescue group. We don't have behavior and training resources. I do feel like in a lot of situations we go above and beyond for animals that we can. And I'm continuously impressed with our team and what they do. So, all right, I did it. That was long. Thank you guys. Sarah, Leanne, Jill, do you guys want to add anything in here? I can stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, there were just a couple of things. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
No. Oh, okay. Everybody else is muted, that's why. And then the screens, all the screens just went away. Just going off of the things that Erica had already stated, as far as other shelters that are calling themselves open admission, but potentially changing to manage intake and how a lot of people are coming to our facility. Just today, a gentleman came all the way from Sacramento. He took a bus ride here because he heard that our shelter was the one that he should bring his dog to surrender because he could no longer keep it. Dog had severe separation anxiety, was under socialized with other dogs. So we told him that, yeah, we can take the dog, but we would most likely have to euthanize it. So he took the dog back, I believe, unless it was, I don't remember.
Before I came.
Yeah, so I believe he took the dog back because he didn't want to euthanize, but that's the reputation that we currently have, which is good, but at the same time, you know, people are coming from all over the state to bring animals to us because they know that we'll take them or they've heard good things about us, but that's not fair for their communities to be turning them away. And like Erica said, we're just, you know, we're picking up the messes and cleaning up the messes from our community, which is what we're supposed to be doing. But now it's going into all these other communities and not only having to pick up their messes, but the messes that the shelter should be taking care of.
I jump in to piggyback what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I worked for two different limited admission organizations on the East Coast, and that means they do managed intake. So we get to kind of filter what comes in. And at one of the places, what every staff member would do is you'd half the time work up at client services and the other half of the time work in animal care. And for managed intake, if we got a phone call, say it was like, hey, I have a senior pit bull that is dog reactive that I need to surrender, we would go off of a workflow sheet that for any medical or behavior animal, it'd have to be at least a month and a half before we could take it in, even if we had a kennel in the building, because we didn't want to take that animal in and we wanted them to exhaust every option and not even use this if they don't need to. And sometimes that means animals were dumped in the community because they couldn't hold the animal until the date that we would take the animal in. So I've seen both sides of it, and the other side is not pretty. And it maybe in some communities where there's not a lot of intake, it works out well, but that's just not the case here. So staff here, a lot of us have seen various different sides of animal welfare. So I just wanted to kind of give a glimpse into that.
Yeah, another municipal shelter in the area, a dog was adopted from them, and on the 31st day of the new owner having the dog, they felt it wasn't the right fit, so they tried to bring the dog back to that shelter, and they said, oh, you've had it for more than 30 days, we can't take it. Or other shelters will say, oh, maybe in 3 weeks we might have a spot, we can't take it right now, even though the dog was adopted from here. So it's just.
But if someone comes in with highly adoptable puppies,
Yeah.
you might take them in that minute.
Yeah.
So it is just a very different atmosphere having an open admission and having
Can't see anybody's video right now. Can you guys see us?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know why all of our video just went away.
See you and a bunch of other people.
Okay, perfect. What was I gonna also talk about? rescue options. So I've had some volunteers in the past and even recently ask, hey, if an animal is going to be euthanized, can you let us all know first so we can try and find a rescue? The answer is no. If you guys know or volunteers know of rescues that might be able to help, I am more than willing to take that information and research it myself. But I've been doing this so long and working with so many different rescues that I just know that, like Erica said, a lot of these rescues are full. Husky Rescue and German Shepherd Rescue I've worked closely with for a number of years, and they don't even respond to my emails anymore. Most rescues don't even respond to the emails, so you kind of have to nag them just for them to say no. So there aren't a lot of rescue options out there. Trying to think.
Like a good example is these Malinois puppies.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah reached out to this rescue and nobody responded. We were like, bummer, you know, they're puppies. We were hoping they're breed specific, they're purebreds. And then maybe like less than a week later, I get this random email in my inbox sent to one of the general email addresses of some volunteer from one of the specific rescues wanting to foster for the organization. And I was like, Sarah, I thought you reached out to them. And she's like, yeah, I did. So it's depends on who you ask and who you know. And it didn't used to be that way when I first started working here in 2019. We had a husky with a problem. Sarah got into rescue right away because that was the availability for rescue placement. Same with German Shepherds. They would like come and pluck that animal right out of the kennel.
And now, yeah, they don't even respond. And you know, there's like 10 different German Shepherd rescues in California, and I will email all of them and nobody will respond. So rescue is definitely an option, but it's not always an option. And I want to make sure it's very clear that people understand that just because the dog's not adoptable here doesn't mean we're going to be able to find a rescue. We will do what we can to find it, but it doesn't always happen. I mean, luckily, you know, for just so you guys know, the SPCA, they help us out a lot whenever they have open spaces. Mandy, she's the general manager over there. She will message me and say, hey, we have this open and this open. Do you have animals that would work out here well? So recently she said, I have 2 open dog kennels. So she had mentioned Katrin and Frankie. I said, great, that sounds wonderful. But I said, what about Romeo? And based on, you know, all the information we had, they said, oh, we talked about him. We can't take him. He's too reactive. We have other dogs that are reactive that we're working with. I said, okay, I understand. Well, then Karen Kemp took him out on spot and he was magical. And she sent us an email and pictures, and I sent that to the SPCA, and she's like, okay, let me bring it back up again. And then Chrissy Durant took him out and got even better information, sent that to them, and they're like, okay, now we can take him. So sometimes you have to play with them and talk to them more and more and give them better information. There's a clapping signal. For it to work. So that takes extra time. And obviously volunteer help because staff can't take these dogs out to get real world experience. So we really appreciate that. But yeah, the rescue world is not what it used to be. And it's, you know, before the pandemic, things were a lot different. I could get a dog out in a couple of days. Now it's like, we want this dog, but we can't do it for a week and a half, like one of the Malinois puppies. Somebody's taking one of them this weekend, but they're waiting. It's been a week and a half, and that's when they can do it. So
also, just to add, just because they get transferred to rescue doesn't
yes,
mean they get adopted out. So now we are sending an animal with potential medical, behavior, or no problems, and this other organization is now responsible for their placement and care. Some of the animals that we have transferred out do come back for euthanasia, and sometimes it's not always relayed to you guys because we don't want to bring up the negative when we were just celebrating a positive.
Yeah.
So that is something to keep in mind, that just because it leaves the building doesn't mean it's a win automatically. Things can still happen in the home. And I mean, that's happened. I have this we had a really rough day when I first became volunteer coordinator, where I think 10 dogs came back as returned adoptions.
In one day?
Yeah, you helped me do the euthanasia.
Oh my God.
And they were all because of behavior. being adopted out within a year span, and they just all happen to come back on the same day with severe behaviors and bite histories. So we may have celebrated those adoptions in the moment, but now these dogs are in the world and these cats are in homes, and that's a whole, someone's caring for them and someone's responsible for them.
And so that's why some dogs or cats or animals we will not look for rescue for, because we don't feel it's A, safe for the public, B, something that a rescue organization or foster home could work with, and C, if we send this dog out that has bitten a person or attacked another dog or killed a cat or whatever reason we're sending it for, that dog is taking a spot of another very adoptable dog that could go to that facility or a rescue or a foster. So it sounds horrible, but a more adoptable dog could potentially get euthanized down the line because this dog took that spot in a foster when in reality it shouldn't have.
And I mean, people who are happy with where they adopted from, they come back and support. Prime example, you guys might have been seeing Monica on social media in her foster home. They adopted from us. That's why they're fostering for us. They adopted a highly social, really great, like Catahoula Shepherd mix named Roscoe. And now they're fostering Monica because they're not ready to get a second dog, but they want to help us out. And they know we're going to do a safe placement for a foster animal because they adopted a safe dog. So they're coming back and supporting, whereas someone who has a bad experience is very unlikely to support us or recommend us in the future. And that's understandable.
And there are different situations, like, you know, Romeo, he was here for a very long time and he showed some dog reactivity. He would pull on leash and yell at other dogs, but he had also been in situations where he could play with other dogs, or he would walk down the street and not react to another dog. Or when he was on spot with Karen, he was fine. But then there's other situations where dogs are showing dog reactivity or other behavior issues that are not going to be suitable for us to keep working on rescue for. So there can definitely be a difference. One of them I know that you guys wanted to, or some people wanted to talk about, was Henry. When he, Heidi, and Hazel all came in, they were
Marginal.
well, I wouldn't say marginal. They were quiet. They were under socialized, but they were more on the like submissive side of you know, their reaction towards things that scared them, different environmental things. But being in the shelter environment, you know, luckily Hazel got adopted, and I'm hearing, I think she's doing fine. Heidi was adopted, but then was returned, and once she was returned and back in a kennel, she was a completely different dog. Barking aggressively, air snapping, couldn't interact with another dog anymore. And then Henry, you know, he was an adoption, then we moved him in the street to see if there's a guinea pig that's throwing a dish at its kennel next to Jill. He was barking, lunging, reacting to any person or dog that walked by. He growled and bared his teeth at a volunteer.
Out of the kennel.
Outside of the kennel. And, you know, I had taken him out a couple days before we did euthanize him, and he was out in the yard just running around, just like couldn't, I guess, focus. He was just all over the place, and you could tell that, you know, it was due to kennel stress, but for a dog to decline that quickly and that severely is concerning. So I know when out with some of the volunteers, he was sweet, cuddly, you know, he would lean into you and just love on you, but the severity of his reactivity and how quickly it happened just made him not safe. And also, it's not fair for him to be living that way. You know, we did try rescue, we did try foster requests, and we didn't get any response back from that. So we're left with having to make that decision.
And an animal's response to stress, even the shelter environment, shines a light at bigger issues. So thanks, George.
I'm good.
It shines a light on their basic bounce back and resiliency. And that can even be needed in an adoptive home. So like you adopt a dog and you have the luck that I have, and you have to bring your dog to the emergency vet the first week that you adopt it because it jumps out of the car window while someone's driving. You better hope that the dog can be safely handled at the vet. Because otherwise it's going to be more money, more resources, all these different things play into it because there are emergency situations. There are times that these animals need bounce back in a home. And so sometimes when they don't bounce back in a shelter, it does kind of highlight that they do have a lack of resiliency. Not all the time, but sometimes it is.
And for those 3 particular dogs, you know, they were brought in as strays, all 3 of them. At the same time, somebody found them, which is highly unlikely, but, you know, they had to have been outdoor dogs, not socialized or interacted with, probably ever outside of their backyard. So, you know, we do see some resiliency when they first come in and they're like, oh, you know, we're like, these dogs are really sweet. They're passing their evaluations, but then we see what their real, I don't want to say real behavior, but what a little stress put on them can do when they're out of their environment that they're used to being in.
I mean, even potentially as they become more comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes more undesirable behaviors can come out because their fear is suppressing what they're actually feeling. So I know some people say like, oh, just give them some time, they'll warm up and they'll be great. But sometimes it can be the opposite, especially with a lot of these like under-socialized backyard animals.
And that's what
Sarah,
we're getting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, can you touch on a little bit on how you go about vetting a rescue organization? Because you talked about that volunteers could send you some information, but what's your process for vetting an organization and some of your experience of even vetted organizations that have turned out to be, you know, a little scary?
So if someone comes to me and says, hey, I have this rescue, and I'm like, oh, I've never heard of that rescue before, I'll look into it. So first I usually Google it and see, you know, what kind of reviews they have, you know, what their website shows. Are they a 501c3? Because we will only work with placement partners that are 501c3, unless it's another shelter that we know is an established shelter. Not all shelters are 501c3. You even know what that means? It means a tax nonprofit, yeah, organization, recognized by the government. So I will check it out online. I will figure out what county it's in and contact the animal control for that county and see if they've had any issues with them in the past or if they've transferred animals to them, what their experience was. There is a email that us as supervisors and management are on, and it's a large group of, I think, 90-ish people that work in shelters throughout California that I can say, hey, have you worked with this rescue before? And they will say, yes, they're great, or oh my God, they're horrible. Don't even call them. Don't even consider sending an animal to them. So that's one of the resources we use also. So with that being said, right when I came back from maternity leave, there was a husky here named Jax. He was white, and somebody had told me about a dog that was here while I was gone named Stormy, a husky that went to rescue. And I was like, oh, well, this is a new rescue. It's down south. Okay, let me call them and see if they might be able to help out with Jax. So I call them, and the owner of the rescue, I was like, hey, we have this other dog. I heard you took this one from us. Thank you for that. I was wanting to see if you could help us. And she just kind of like exploded and said, oh gosh, I'm so full. I have all these dogs in kennels at different vet hospitals and I'm paying for it out of pocket. And I just tried to save 3 from the shelter that were on this kill list, and there's 20 more that I'm working on. And I was like, oh, well, how often? I thought they were in foster homes. And oh, no, they're not in fosters. They're in kennels. like, well, how often do your volunteers get them out? And she's like, oh, I don't have volunteers. They're lucky if they get out 15 minutes a day. So then I was like, okay, thank you. We'll figure out something else for this dog, for Jax. And then I did a little bit more research, and some things were done in not the most appropriate manner. But we got the dog back, and she was urine stained, had lost 5 or 7 pounds in the 2 or 3 weeks that they had her down there. And
Her surgery site.
her incision site, oh yeah, they got her spayed, and her incision was like 10 inches long and
Staples.
still had staples in it. And it was just like, oh my God. And what's difficult about it is Erica, she was the one that vetted this rescue, and she spoke to the woman. She spoke to other places. The woman's like, oh yeah, they're all in foster homes. You know, we have a great reputation, whatever was said. So we're like, okay, great, we'll send the dog there. But lo and behold, it was a horrible experience. We were able to put her back up for adoption, and she did find a home. She was very marginal, so that may not have been the right decision, but she's doing okay.
I see her at the beach all the time.
Yeah. So she's still, it worked out. Another rescue that I have I'm not going to say the rescue's name. I have worked with them for 10 plus years. Always have had a good reputation. I just recently found out, after they called and asked us to take a couple of dogs from them, a rescue, that they're changing their policies to, if a dog has been in their care in a foster home for more than 45 days, they're now considering it inventory, and they are losing money on it, and they will be surrendering it to another rescue or a shelter. We are not going to work with that rescue anymore because of that. And my main contact for that rescue has also cut ties with them because of that, because that is not rescue. That's, I don't even know what it's making profit off dog. I don't even know what it is. But that, I mean, that's a rescue that I've known for so long and worked with for so long. And it was really disheartening to hear that. So, that's why when somebody says, hey, can I contact this rescue? I think I know this person that might be able to take this dog. I'm going to say no and ask you to give me the information so I can do it myself, because say you, this is another thing. Say you talk to this rescue and they're like, oh yeah, we'll take this dog. And then you let me know and I'm like, that is a rescue that we have not worked with for years. This is the reason why. No, we not send that dog to them. But then they contact us and we're saying, no, we're going to euthanize it. There's some legal things that they can do that they, I can't remember all of it because
They legally have the right to pull the
Yeah.
animal if it's going to be euthanized and it's not a public safety hazard.
yeah. So we may have to send that dog to that rescue, even though we know it's not going to be a safe place for it or a good place for it. And, you know, I've said it to some volunteers or, you know, some people I've talked to that, you know, there are certain circumstances where I would rather euthanize a dog than send it to a rescue where it's going to end up sitting in a cage like Stormy did. Because what kind of life is that? I mean, a lot of these rescues are just saving dogs for the sake of saving dogs, but now what?
They actually have
Yeah.
started calling the no-kill movement the slow kill movement, because dogs in particular, although cats too, there's more and more cases of hoarding happening in these no-kill organizations.
And if you go back, I mean, the slides that Eric was putting out, you know, in 2021, our live release rate, and that's not just adoptable animals, that was everything, right, Erica?
Yeah, anything off the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
sorry.
our live release rate was 84%. So, you know, no kills go off of the not euthanizing anything that's adoptable and healthy and adoptable. So, I mean, we could probably consider ourselves that too, based on we're not euthanizing things that are healthy and adoptable. And our live release rate as a whole is 84%. That's pretty outstanding, if you ask me, for a open admission shelter that doesn't turn anything away. Yeah, stop talking now.
Thank you for sharing all that. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to add there? Leanne, do you want to say anything about medical stuff? Okay.
I could speak really quickly about the volunteer interaction that kind of sparked this.
Sure.
So I'm sure a lot of you heard about the situation regarding Molly, and what Erica alluded to, that a volunteer, there was rumors going around the volunteer was fired questioning, for asking questions about the decision that had been made. I just want to clarify kind of an overview of the situation. So it was closing time, and me and another staff member were up front, and the decision had been made earlier in the day. We had already exhausted resources as far as rescue options. We've held on to Molly for 3 weeks now, hoping for some dramatic improvement, which unfortunately didn't happen.
Actually
A month. And so the decision to euthanize was made, and myself and another staff member performed euthanasia earlier that day. And after a long, I think it was a long Saturday or Friday, with a lot of animals coming in. We were getting like 40 cats a day at this point.
Yeah, between shelters, yeah.
Yeah, between Watsonville and here. A volunteer came up to me, screaming at me at client services, asking why I killed an animal, why I killed Molly. And I asked if we could talk about this. I said, I'm more than happy to have this conversation with you. If we could just step back to a non-public area, we can chat about this. And as I'm trying to explain in detail the behavior we observed, all the steps that we have gone through, I was repeatedly screamed at and asked, why did you kill? Why did you kill? Why did you kill her? How could you do this? What type of person are you? And at that point, I kind of escalated the situation and asked animal control to escort the person out. So I just ask that we are more than happy to have these conversations. I've had these conversations with a lot of you guys as far as how an animal is doing, cat, dog, rabbit, every single type of animal I feel like we've had conversations about. And we're more than happy to continue that, but it's just the way people communicate with staff is the key part. And it's the same way that we are expected to communicate with you guys too. We're all human beings, we all have feelings, and this is our job. Although it is our job, we also have a lot of emotions attached to it. So being mindful of that we are humans, and it's a huge emotional burden to carry, making all these decisions and working together, especially the 3 of us as a team.
And not only making them, but then having to act upon them.
Yes.
Try to wrap your brain around that. Like, I'm making this decision. This animal has to be euthanized. Now I have to go euthanize it.
Yeah, it's a lot, and we do it because we're passionate about our jobs, and we, this is what our hearts are in. But it does not make it easier when people come up to us from the public, volunteers, other staff members asking why we are killing things. So I just wanted to clarify for those who may have not heard the full story.
Or heard alternate stories.
Or alternate stories, what the situation is.
I want to jump in here really quick, because I think this is just a really good opportunity. I know we've been going on for a while, and I'm just going to make a really quick about staff and volunteer communication, because this was an incident where it was inappropriate and disrespectful. But like, for one thing, I hope that you all walk away from this meeting understanding that with more insight into the process and into the decision making that we have to do here, and how these decisions are made, and also the background on the staff, and that we're all professionals in animal welfare, and everyone has experience in this, and Leanne, Sarah, and Jill know what they're seeing, and sometimes staff sees things that volunteers don't, just because they do have that trained eye. And we are constantly communicating with each other about animals. It's not a surprise. And so just because you don't hear the communication doesn't mean we're not having it. And you can always, once again, I think we should just say you can always ask if you're concerned about an animal, if you have behavior observations, if you're like, why is this dog been red locked, etc. You can always email us. You can always ask. Please don't feel like you're too, that we're going to bite your head off or get in trouble or anything like that. If it's respectful, I think the big blanket is we want the courtesy of respectful communication. And I think that includes responding rather than reacting. Sometimes when we have emotions, it's very instantaneous, but maybe sometimes if we're feeling really and we always this is an emotional place, please feel emotions, but yeah, we want to be respectful in that. And you can always email me, you can always email the staff if you have concerns about things. I wanted to piggyback on that because I think it's a bigger conversation than just one incident. It's also, we all want to be trusting of each other and respectful of each other. And I think we can get there if we all agree that we can have positive communication with each other, even about hard things. And that is my spiel.
Thanks, Megan. You rock.
Thank you, Megan and Sarah and Jill and everybody. And I'm just gonna add one more thing in there. First and foremost, I can see all the people who are on this call, and so I know we're preaching to the choir with this stuff, and I don't want it to be like you guys are doing something wrong. No one's doing anything wrong. We just want to be transparent because we know how the gossip spreads, and it just happens in any work environment. I think one of the things that has come up for me over the years of being around our volunteer program is this thought process from some people that they have to protect the animals from staff, that they have to hide certain behavior observations, or that they have to do things a little bit differently because if staff find out about a certain behavior, that we're going to euthanize the animal. And that isn't how it should be. We're all supposed to be working together. We consider our volunteers a part of our team. And I've said this before, so this is probably not new information, but it shouldn't be staff versus volunteers. We want your guys' feedback, and while we might not be able to implement all of it based on our operations or based on what our team's resources are at the time, but we absolutely want to hear from you. So with that being said, I see Karen's hand up. If there's other questions or specific cases, we can talk about those. So go ahead, Karen.
Hi, yeah, I didn't know if there was time for questions, but I have a few, of course, as usual. But I'll just start with, I don't know, at random. Let's see. So Sarah mentioned Jax, and then we heard that she's doing okay. But
Stormy,
how do we?
So Stormy, so Jax, I ended up finding rescue for. But Stormy was the one that we ended up taking back and got adopted.
The question is, how do we know? Do we follow up with adopters where we're not 100% sure it's working out? Do we follow up with them?
So we used to have a adoption follow-up call process that we would do, but we don't right now because of staffing and the amount of people that are coming in needing help. We just don't have the staff that can do that. We have discussed having volunteers do that. We just haven't implemented it yet.
So what we know about that dog is I literally see her on the beach every time I bring my dog to Rio Del Mar. Yeah. And by doing well, I don't mean to say she lives the most luxurious life. She has to be walked on a chain leash because anytime she puts her mouth on a leash, she chews through it and runs away from her owner. So it's all taken in context.
She was lucky that she landed an owner that is tolerant and willing to work with those behaviors.
Yes. So yeah, just put that out there.
But if there are animals that we may have concerns about that have gone into adoptive homes, we'll call and check on them. Or if we hear something from somebody, we can say, hey, how's it going? And see if anything is alluded to that there's a problem or anything. But yeah, we would like to get back to doing that. It's just.
When client services theoretically has more time, there is a protocol to do it. But it's kind of as you have extra time, and with 500 animals in our care, there's enough time.
Yes.
Thanks.
Sure. Next question.
I have more. I mean, I have 3, 4, 5 more, or I'll let someone else ask.
Nobody else has their hand up, so until somebody does, you keep going.
Okay, so let's see. Erica, you said that, okay, so in one of your slides, you said that volunteer observations are important. It was part of I can't remember exactly, but I think it was like a grid that had maybe 6. Other than the spot outings that we do for adoptable dogs, is there anything else that volunteers could do in terms of observing dogs that would be helpful for staff, whether they're currently adoptable or not adoptable, or is there some form that we could fill out, like without sending a gazillion emails to all of you, like, oh, this dog was great on this thing. Like, is there something that we could formalize that volunteers could help with?
Personally, I like the emails. I may not always respond to them, but I read them. And like for Romeo, like, had you just filled out a chart or a paper for me, I don't think he would have gotten or been able to be transferred. I like the pictures. I like the stories. I like the information. That's me.
But what about dogs that are not, because I couldn't have taken Romeo out if he was not adoptable. So is there some way, like, for the dogs that are out on stray, or I don't know.
I mean, so like just taking them out for their TLC, like taking them out for their potty board and
There's
shit?
some way other than, because we all, as volunteers, we fill out, we're like easy to walk, pulls, or, we make little notes on the kennel, like the timesheet, but
yeah,
I don't know if that's useful.
I had talked to Megan recently and asked about making new ones, and I think she put some on my desk. Oh, they're right here. I guess you guys can see me. I think I'm gonna look at this when I have time, because I have so much of that. And implement a new TLC card, so it's not just like circle this or tell us this. It's like, write what happened. And I know in the past we've said don't write anything negative. And I don't know if we want to keep going that way.
I think write what happened.
I think,
Let's be
yeah.
transparent. Even with the cats too, I know there's some cat people on here. I don't like that we have to like hide the bad comments for the public to not see, because we've had the public comment and they're like, oh my God, I used to have a tortie that bit me when they would get overstimulated. I loved that cat. And they got the cat. So it goes both ways.
Because, there are times where like I will go into a dog eval basically blind and not know anything about the dog. And I'll go take the dog out and I'm like, I wonder what other volunteers have experience with this. So I look at those, I read them, and if it's just like poop and pee, wanted cuddles and kisses, I'm like, okay, cool. But if there's other issues that, maybe you haven't written on the board, or maybe you didn't think it was too big of an issue, I won't know about it, and I may need to know about it. So I think we should go back to writing what happened, if that's cool with everybody, because, and if it's a big issue, we're probably going to be doing something about that issue, and we would take that information. And if it's horrible, then yeah, we gotta deal with that. But if it's not, then we can just cross it out or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Is the whiteboard something we could use that?
Yep.
I mean,
that's kind of, we watch it all the time. Like right now, it says Ami and Junior resource guard don't have anything out there with them, and on the bottom it says Ami and Junior fighting over resources in the yard. So it's helpful if everybody reads it. But yeah,
they when they go to play group, they literally fought. The first time we did play group, they fought a dog over an apple off the tree. So we weren't joking when we said they have resource guarding other dogs.
Yes, whiteboard, TLC cards. I think that's the best route to go until, maybe when things, knock on wood, when and if things calm down a little bit, we can look at revising this even more. But just now, we just need to have it like kind of straight and forward and easy to get that information across. And of course, if you see a problem, email it to us, because we need to look more into it.
Like a problem or a good thing.
Exactly. I want to know good things. Yeah.
I noticed that Emily has her hand raised.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, thanks, Karen. Yeah, I haven't been a volunteer too long, just since July, so still working on that. But my question is, I'm wondering, it seems like this happens a lot, but I've seen, right, that dogs get adopted like Romeo, and then I think it was like 2 hours later, he was brought back, which I was really disheartened about that. But my question is this: I'm wondering, is there something volunteers can do, and I've just observed a dog show, I haven't done too many, but are there different questions we can ask or something we can gather more information so that it doesn't happen as often that people adopt a dog? And I mean, is there anything that volunteers can do, or is that more just like, okay, people are going to do what they're going to do and they're going to bring dogs back?
I think it will be something that we would need to talk about as staff and see where we can go, because we would probably have to have a training if we decided to have volunteers ask questions during dog shows. Ideally, staff is explaining everything to potential adopters before they meet the animal, but it doesn't always happen. This woman adopted him and brought him back 2 hours later because he pulled too hard and it hurt her back.
Good thing about that is he didn't pull her down reacting to a dog get off leash and get in a scuffle or anything.
Yeah.
She brought him back. She wasn't comfortable and nothing happened.
Yes.
So returns are also not a bad thing. I always tell people.
Yeah, I mean, we get dogs returned all the time. We're like, put it right back up for adoption, depending on the situation. So I think, we could do everything till we were blue in the face as far as consulting for adoptions, and we would still get returns. I appreciate the wanting to help out with that. And like I said, maybe we can talk about that later on. But I think right now,
I mean, I've also seen a lot of articles, and I think I've brought it up in meetings that among staff, that sometimes what we want as the perfect home, we are going to end up skipping over so many good enough homes that we end up increasing the length of stay for our animals. And sometimes the length of stay ends up as euthanasia because they have kennel stress and they're not safe anymore. So now we just skipped multiple good enough homes that we could have maybe rooted for more to get that animal out. So I think that I know it seems a little backwards thinking, but sometimes over counseling and putting up too many restrictions actually ends up increasing your length of stay and not allowing for animals to find their perfect homes. So even if we, like Sarah says, if we counsel till we're blue in the face, sometimes the person who ends up adopting the animal is just the perfect fit, even if we didn't think that with them walking in with their application. So staff have a lot of conversations and have a lot of information about the animals in our databases and kind of behind the scenes that volunteers don't have access to. And that's also information on these adopters too. So yeah.
and I just wanted to say that I think if volunteers are doing dog shows, that if they do have any like big red flags or concerns, bringing it to a staff member the moment of. So that we can maybe have a staff member up front, then either talk to that potential adopter about what concerns the volunteer had, or just kind of follow up in terms of how the show went, or maybe do a second show. I'm not quite sure, depends on the situation. But volunteers should always feel empowered to come and talk to a staff member if they have concerns. It's not like someone needs a dog and they automatically walk home. It's always finding that balance between, like Jill said, like, we don't want to skip over the all right homes. And I think we're all being honest, like we all probably fail our own pets in some ways. We work too much. We don't take them for 5-mile hikes, every day or something like that. But your guys' feedback for those shows is very important also.
I think we just ask that volunteers don't turn into drill sergeants during the shows. That's all.
Yeah, it's more
finding that balance, having a conversation.
So what would be the best way for a volunteer to do that? Should the volunteer go close the show with the person and then come into client services, or come to one of you three, Sarah, Leanne, or Jill, and go I would say, okay, let's go,
if you're not comfortable with it, but they're not getting the hint, you can be like, okay, let's go talk to client services and see. I'll let them know what's going on, and you can radio somebody to meet you like in a back office or something. So,
Okay.
'cause I know it can be really uncomfortable to like talk about that kind of situation if the people are right there. I don't like doing it, so I'll always pull somebody in the back, but
Yeah, and frankly, if you're a volunteer, you can probably always pull the card. You know what? I'm a volunteer and I need to talk to a
Yeah.
staff member about this show. This isn't our role to do because they don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And also, it's a good idea if you have a great show and you think it's going well, then also pass that on to client service and say, hey, blah, blah, blah is coming up. They want to adopt Max. Everything went well. I know we've had some things where kind of like the clients end up at the front desk before whoever's doing the show kind of is able to give feedback and stuff. So
Okay, so feedback to either client services. Well, it seems like feedback to client services is the way to do it. Not
yeah,
necessarily to
And I would say,
Jill.
if
Yeah.
anyone's like, if you're uncomfortable with the situation, before even leaving the yard, just radio, hey, any supervisor, just want to touch base. You can even make up a white lie. I want to touch base about so-and-so's poop, or I think they need to have dinner now. Like, just say something very basic, just that you need to leave the yard, put the dog away, and touch base with the staff member.
Okay, any
will not know.
supervisor, to any supervisor. Okay.
Yeah.
pretend to get a phone call. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I heard something. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll always support that. Don't stress about it.
All right.
And just for clarification, before an adopter meets a dog, do they get a whole rundown of the dog's like history, or do they just get their application approved and go meet the dog?
They should be getting a medical and behavior overview based on the notes that's in Chameleon. So like behavior observations, owner surrender notes, medical. Is the system perfect? No system's perfect, but we try our best to give them a good overview so that they kind of know what they're stepping into, because we also kind of want to start filtering at that point. If someone's like,
Right.
I have chickens in the home, and then I look at the notes for the Belgian Malinois puppies that they have had prey drive and killed chickens, and think maybe this isn't the best fit, and I can guide them towards someone else instead. And it ends up utilizing our resources, as we talked about, to make a safe placement.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Oh.
Are there other questions? Karen, do you still have?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I know.
It's not a bad thing. Questions are
Okay.
good.
Okay. Okay. So this one, I feel like this one's a little bit challenging, but I'm sure you have an answer for this. So we've heard, and I totally get that that you are all stretched as staff. So my question is, do you feel that as staff you have enough hands-on time to adequately review the tough cases like Henry? I mean, yeah. So that's my question.
I'll speak for myself, and I mean, I really can't give you a straight answer. It's kind of a gray area, because the past 3 weeks we've been dealing a lot with the ringworm stuff. So some stuff did get pushed aside and not dealt with in a timely manner that it should have. So during that time, I would say no, we didn't have adequate enough staffing to do that. Knock on wood, since we're not having to have those days of closing and dipping all the cats and all that other stuff. I mean, I was able to get through a bunch of doggy vows yesterday and today, and send out rescue requests, and Jill sent out foster requests yesterday, and we've gotten a handful of dogs at the foster today. So yesterday and today, yes, I do think we have adequate enough staffing.
But I think that also
But it changes.
It circles back to our resources
Yes.
as a group. No, we do not have the resources to adequately work with dogs like Henry.
No.
That's the point blank answer. We do not have resources to work with behaviorally challenged animals that are not safe to place in the community. And we don't have resources to work with animals that become very stressed very quickly in the shelter. And that's the reality of our situation, and we're trying. And I wouldn't have guessed, to be honest, I wouldn't have guessed he would be the one to have that severe of a reaction out of those 3 dogs. I would have guessed it would be Hazel, just based on when we first met them. but there's so many different things that factor into it that can change on the dime. Whether it's how many other dogs are in the shelter, if someone goes out on medical leave, if we have to ringworm dip, 120 cats in a day and clean all of their housing. And that's the reality of sheltering. And we're not going to get it perfect, but we're doing our best as far as the resources we have. And I think like Erica said and Sarah said, and everyone's kind of mentioned, we go above and beyond as far as what resources we're offered, which is really incredible as the small group of staff we have.
Yeah, no, I have absolutely no doubt about that. I'm not questioning that. Just like, are there enough staff to go around to adequately assess a dog like Henry? Okay, yeah, we've all 5 of us have said this dog is not adoptable at this time in our shelter.
Yeah.
That was more my question.
We all saw it. We all heard it from other people and volunteers. So I think for his case, I think it was fairly assessed that he had lost his marbles or, declined significantly in the short amount of time that he was here, and that euthanasia is the best option for him since we didn't have anywhere else for him to go.
And just to add to that too, Karen, just to be really clear, when we're making, anytime it's, we're leaning to that point, it's typically, unless something horribly dramatic happens, like a really severe bite, or let's say he was out on a walk and attacked another dog or something like that, unless it's something really severe, we're not just making that decision in the morning and then euthanizing at the end of the day. This is something that is accumulation. So just to speak to that a little bit, that on the day-to-day, we're all expressing we don't have that time to do individualized care, but when it comes to doing our assessments, behavior and medical assessments on the animals, I know that we're spending a great deal of time making these difficult decisions, as well as, of course, in cases where we can, trying to get animals out to rescue as well.
Yeah, because ultimately, we're not going to just, they're life and death decisions for these animals. So we're not going to just be like, I think we should probably do this. Okay, we're just going to do it. We're going to mull about it for a couple of days unless it's something that the animal's suffering or is, super stressed in the kennel or whatnot. And, when some of us are off, like Leanne's off on opposite days that Jill and myself are off, I will text her or call her and say, hey, this is going on with this animal. How do you feel about this? Do you want to wait till you come back from your days off? Are you okay with us moving forward? Or I'll talk to like Karen in Watsonville. Hey, you saw this dog when it was there. Do you have anything to say negatively or positively that could make this decision go a different way? So, we do go out of our way to include everybody that we can, even on our days off when we don't want to be bothered, we still do it.
Sarah gets text messages from me at least once a week, late in the night or early in the morning, with a random idea.
Yes.
I know. There's no question. I don't think among all of the volunteers there's any question that you are all super dedicated. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah.
I had another question about what Erica had mentioned, what is manageable in the average home. And I was curious about what makes a dog manageable in the average home, but I also noticed that Emily has her hand up, so I don't.
Yeah, I want Sarah and Leanne, your guys' window there, to comment on this, but I want to say, first of all, as a person who has only had unmanageable dogs that ultimately shouldn't have been adoption candidates ever, I did not get them from here. But having an unmanageable dog, if you've ever been in that situation where you have an aggressive, reactive, unsocialized animal, it is one of the most stressful things that I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Even in a couple weeks, my best friend is coming to stay with me, and I'm going to have to navigate how I deal with it, because after hours, my dog would like to bite people that come into our home. After hours, meaning after 7 p.m. It's very odd. There's no rhyme or reason. Bentley is just a menace. But I love him and I take care of him, but it is so stressful. So we don't want to put that on our adopters. So when we manageable, when I wrote that based on the conversation that we were all having, to me, that means those just basic socialization. They're not fearful. They're not scared and going to possibly have some fear-based aggression when they are afraid of a new environment or a new thing, that they're going to succeed out in the real world, outside of the limited things that we can do for them here. I always refer to our shelters like the Club Med of shelters. I know that's what Melanie called it during the fire, because we had so many animals here that from families that were evacuated. And the animals, I mean, these dogs have it made, and cats too, and the rabbits. Our animals have it made with all of you volunteers that give them so much love and attention. I mean, they're getting out more than our animals at home. So that's part of what you all are providing, is that enrichment and helping them learn those positive behaviors. But also it does bring out some of the other things that help us make those decisions on what is manageable. The one that I think about a lot, that I think he did ultimately get adopted out, Othello. I watched that dog pull some of you, not on the screen, to the ground, almost dragging into traffic, chasing cars. For me,
Oh, yeah.
when I saw that, I said, that is not a manageable behavior. I do not think that dog is an adoption candidate through us. He's a beautiful, sweet, sweet dog, but that is going to be a challenge. That needs the perfect home, the magical farm where there's a fence and he never has to go on a walk or see a car or a bike or a skateboard. And those places don't really exist, right? So we can't adopt out every dog that needs that magical fairy tale land. So I don't know, maybe I just said all of it. Sarah, do you guys have anything to add?
Hold on, I'm sorry.
Manageable behavior.
Look up the.
Yeah, I put the wrong person in there. It's fine. Just
We
change it.
call it socially conscious sheltering. So it's looking at what the community is looking for animals. And that is what we aim to adopt out. So if you look at kind of what Erica said at the beginning of this, Santa Cruz is very dog friendly. How many times have you been out at a restaurant and you feel a little nudge and you look down and there's a dog at the table next to you that's saying hi? So dog friendly, dog social.
I can get it.
A lot of dogs are off leash. So that is a thing that we do have to consider, versus if maybe you're in a rural area where you don't encounter as many dogs, then reactivity and aggression is something that you could adopt out of that organization. So I would say manageable really depends on the community, and our community is looking for family dogs that are social with people, can handle a dog coming up and running up to it off leash, and nothing happening. And it's different in every community, but that's what we found. And honestly, we all hope that the above average adopter, as far as skill set for behavior concerns, is going to come in. But the people who have adopted really difficult behavioral dogs do not typically go wanting another one. And that's speaking from experience. I know Sarah has had her share of difficult dogs. I've had to euthanize my own personal dog, my first dog that I adopted, who was healthy medically, behaviorally, not so at all. And I will never get a behaviorally challenging dog again because of that. And that's the same thing with behavior consultants. They don't want to take that on because it's life-changing. I'm friends with people on social media that live in this area, and they have dogs that they can never leave alone. Like one woman the dog has such severe separation anxiety that she has to go board it so she can go on a date night because the dog is too fearful of people, and dogs go out on the patio with them at a dog-friendly patio.
From us?
No.
Okay.
No, not from us. But like
Yeah,
that's the
I had a dog. I had a Weimaraner like that. So yeah, I know.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the dogs that I have right now was, I've had him for almost 10 years. Came to the shelter as a stray from Scotts Valley, already neutered, had a collar. Nobody came looking for him. But if you touch him in the wrong spot, he'll bite you. And so he wasn't an adoption candidate here, but I was dumb and fell in love with him because he's stupid cute. And so I had to finagle my way around to get him into a rescue in order for me to foster him, because I was going to have to euthanize him and I didn't want to. Now that I'm older and I have kids, I won't do that again, but he's difficult, and he's bitten a couple people, and you know, not everybody can even sit next to him because he will, in his 15-year-old body, go after them. But that also kind of leads to there's gray areas for everything also, like for what manageable can be. Unfortunately, it does depend on the type of dog, size-wise. It shouldn't, but it does. Like, for example, we just sent out Patty to foster to adopt. She's this little wiry terrier puppy who was like deathly afraid of everything. But one of our new animal control officers took her home for a couple nights and saw her blossom. So we knew what was going to come once she's comfortable in a home, and we knew it would be safe. So we relayed that information to the foster to adopt, and she's like thrilled to be able to take this dog home. But you know, a dog like, I don't know, I can't even think of an example right now. Molly. Yeah, I guess Molly. So like, she was great with certain people. I personally was never even able to pet her. I know that Tina, you were able to take her home, but other people couldn't even get her in their vehicle.
I mean, there were staff members that would sit at her kennel day after day with bags of hot dogs, and we're never able to pet her.
Yeah,
and I think that goes back to the unpredictability.
But that's just going to like, what's manageable based on size. I guess I shouldn't compare it that way, because if we had a little dog that was like that, I wouldn't put it up for adoption either. Those aren't two good examples. I apologize.
Well, I think the point you were getting at, which is valuable, is that foster homes are more willing to work with a fearful and marginal small dog, simply because if something happens, in all honesty, they can put them in a bathroom. You cannot put, well, you can, but it's not going to be as easy to put an extra large size dog in a bathroom and manage that, or in a very small kennel. It's just the reality of the situation, and the repercussions are totally different if something were to happen, and people's comfort levels are different.
Okay, you guys, we have a couple more hands up. So I know Judy D, I saw your hand up a minute ago, and I see Tina and Emily. Judy, did you still have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, a while ago, like before COVID, when everything was nicer, there used to be a policy that certain dogs, and definitely not some of the dogs you're describing now, but certain dogs would be adopted with the provision that there was an extra deposit put down, and they take the dog to training. The training is completed, they get the deposit back. I know that's not the policy anymore, but is there any consideration of that again? And I'm perfectly aware that it's not going to work for like the Molly cases or the Henry cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I can address that just really quickly. We ultimately decided that it was a barrier to adoption for some of our cases where we were requiring that. We required it on a lot of young adolescent dogs, lots of puppies. At least that's how it was when I first came to the shelter. And ultimately, throughout with the onset of the pandemic and people adopting or purchasing dogs and just droves, it's almost impossible to get a behavior consultant or a training session scheduled in our community. So we ultimately didn't feel like it was very fair, and found that some of those dogs we were requiring it for were sitting here a lot longer, versus if we just spend the time counseling people on it and provide them with a list, which all of our adopters get a list of all the different training and behavior folks in the community. We provide them with that, encourage them to do it, but Ultimately, it's a resource thing, both our community resource, there's not enough trainers out there to take on all these animals. And ultimately, that is a goal for the shelter somewhere down the road in the future to have training and behavior resources available to the general public. That's part of the phase 2 campus expansion plan somewhere in the next 5-10 years, to actually have a community center here on site where we would rent it out to training and behavior folks and have low cost or free sessions for people who adopt from us.
That'd be
so someday,
great.
yeah, I know, it would be amazing. That was one of Melanie's things that she really wanted, because our 2 big reasons why animals are surrendered to us is because of housing, no affordable pet friendly housing, and they have to move and they cannot find a place to take their animal. They do not want to give it up, but they have to. And the other one is behavior. So we want to, most of our progressive programs focus on doing those things, meeting people where they are at, to hopefully not ever even have the animal come to the shelter. And right now, those are the 2 big areas. And unfortunately, we can't help people with housing, and we don't have anyone to do training and behavior. So it makes it difficult to kind of meet those people where they're at and try to intervene before the animals even make it to the shelter. But who knows though, Judy, that could be something that the new shelter manager, maybe they decide it's really important to have that and it could be brought back. It's definitely not out of the question. Just currently community resources doesn't make sense to have that. Okay, Tina.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for offering this time and helping the volunteers understand, because there's a lot of emotions that go along with this. And the thing is, if anyone working here or volunteering here, if you're doing that, we're in this group that loves the animals so much, and you're just gonna have these times that happen and they're sad. So I've been doing this only for like a year here, but I have been doing it since 2015. This is actually the 3rd open admission shelter I've been at. And if I can help anyone else kind of just wrap their head around some of these issues, I just want to kind of explain why I'm in a place like this and kind of how I handle it when a dog does get euthanized. First of all, I think open admission shelters, the animals that are in care in open admission shelters, they're just the most needy in the community. So I moved to this area. I could have gone to SPCA. I could have come here. It was just a no-brainer for me, because I feel like these dogs have more need. So I'm going to give my time there. Every time you apply to volunteer at a place like that, you're told, okay, but these decisions are going to be made and you have to be okay with it. You don't have to be agreeable, but you have to be able to handle these decisions. They're going to be made. They're based on science. I mean, you're not just making this stuff up. There's a lot of learning on your end and how you're making these decisions. And I put my faith in that. Because again, like when Sarah said she has to make a decision, then go euthanize it, I almost cried when she said that. I can't even imagine doing that. So I do believe that the people making these decisions, and my time here, I believe that the dogs are in good hands. So I just kind of like, okay, they know what they're doing. I don't want to get into that. I did have one dog several years ago that at the Monterey SPCA, it was a super shy, fearful dog that chose me as its person. So like, and it was there for months with a behavior program. It was accelerated up to where it was like totally being worked with the behavior team. The behavior team worked with me, knowing I could actually get with the dog. So I became very attached. Twice I was told this dog might get euthanized. It's not coming around to enough people. And luckily, I don't know how this happened, but this totally wonderful patient young couple totally understood what they were getting into. And again, it was like majorly counseled by the behavior department as to how this is going to, how it can go, like what could happen, what, you know, what they need to do to make it be successful. Lots more resources than are here. So it did get adopted, but I mean, brought to my attention over like a 3-month period, it was like a month apart, we might have to euthanize her, we might have to euthanize her. And I was devastated each time. And I told myself, this is a learning experience. And I don't let myself get that attached anymore. I love the dogs. I cried over Henry. I cried over Molly. But there's all these dogs out there that I can still help. And I did help them. I helped make their time here better.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That is the biggest point that I try to tell people is that sorry, I mean, talking with my mouth full. It sucks that these dogs have to be euthanized, but the time that they've spent here is probably the best time they've had in their life.
yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know what they came from before this. You guys made this dog's life worth living to them, if they can even think that way. But it was probably the best time they've ever had.
Yeah.
So
Thank
for
you,
saying that.
Tina.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Tina. I really appreciate it. It's very nice to hear
Yes.
and to share your experience. I'm sure we can all think about our personal, like what it was or what dog it was that like first broke their heart working here, volunteering here, because you kind of do have to build up a little bit of a wall. I remember the first dog that I fell in love with that had to be euthanized, that I was just so upset about, but not at the team. I was like upset with the dog. I'm like, why didn't you make better choices? So this is but then I was reminded that one, she got to be with us and be with all of you guys, and that I wasn't the only one that loved her. There were all these people that did, but the big thing for me was I'm a pity person, so I grew up with pit bulls. So for a while when I first started, it was like every pit bull was like my dog. That was my girl. It even if they didn't look like her, they like had a similar soul, that it was just like every animal was my dog, and that made it so much more difficult. And when I was able to kind of turn that off and create that separation, I could still love on them, but able to not take it home in that way. We take other things home, but not necessarily that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
I know for me it was Delilah. And she was I crossed that bridge with her, and everybody tried so hard. I loved her desperately, as did Sarah. And we did everything for her. Like, she was given every opportunity, and she could not make it in the world. So like, that helped me realize, you know, all the staff and all the volunteers are doing everything that we can to help this one gorgeous dog. But yet, she was just not viable out in the world. So sometimes dogs go gracefully, and I know she had a really good send off. I'll probably never get over her.
I think about her almost every day.
Yeah, she was pretty amazing. But but just my experience with Delilah through the shelter with you, Sarah, and you, Erica, and everyone, just made me realize, like, we're all doing the best we can for these dogs. You know, she was a heartbreaker, but you know, I'm still coming back a year later. I'm still there. Yeah.
And now everybody's crying.
I was crying about Delilah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Tina, thank you for sharing that. I know Sarah and I got excited about what you were saying. Did we cut you off? Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Not really. Not that I can think of right now. You know, I just try to focus on the positive, and just know I'm helping those most in need, and I'm, even if they don't make it all the way through, we're still adding value to their lives, and they are getting something from us. You know, and I even, like, with I have foster kittens. I mean, over so many years, I've probably lost over a dozen foster kittens, and it's heartbreaking because they're in my home and I love them. But what my husband and I say every time is, like, we made their time special. And we gave them that. And that's what we're doing as volunteers with the dogs. We're giving them special time. So that's it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Tina. And we're at 2 hours somehow because, you know, we obviously could talk about this on and on and on. Emily, I see your hand up, so we'll do your last question. And then, of course, the offer still stands. If anyone wants to talk more about this stuff, about specific cases, decisions, or you just want to continue to have this conversation, please reach out to any of us. We're all more than happy to chat with you and to continue this. So go ahead, Emily.
Thanks, everyone. Oh, good conversation. That was reminding me. Henry was that one for me because I haven't been here very long, since July, so that was my first one, and that was hard and shocking. But anyway, appreciate the words. But my question is about resources, and this is, I don't expect you guys to answer this now. It's more just like a brainstorm or thought. Just wondering, since there's clearly not enough staff for all of it, and I don't know everything you guys do. I'm sure it's a ton. I don't know all the things you do, but I'm wondering, are there some things that volunteers could do that we're currently not doing that would free up staff? And like I said, I don't know everything that you do, and I also do know, at least for the dogs, that we often don't even have enough volunteers to get the dogs out. But just being from a mind frame of wanting to help, like, I don't know, I see somebody washing the kennels. I assume that's staff. I have no idea if we'd be allowed to do something like that. But I mean, if that's a need and that would free someone up, I would wash kennels or something. So anyway, just as a thought, if there's anything, and you probably thought about this before a million times, but just bringing it up, if there's anything that we could do to help that would free up staff, I'm throwing that out there as something. Cleaning. Okay.
When we're so short-staffed and we have so many animals, like as supervisors, like Leanne and myself, we spent our first 4 hours of the day cleaning today. So that only gives me 4 hours to work on what I need to work on as a supervisor. Not that I'm above cleaning. I have no problem cleaning, but that's not, I have a lot of other stuff to do. You know what I mean? So helping with laundry, dishes, if you want to help with cleaning cats or dogs, we would love to train you. And if we would just want kind of like a steady schedule, if that's possible, just so we would know when we could expect you. But yes, that's kind of one of the biggest things that we need help with on a regular basis.
Cleaning dogs, like actually like giving them baths, or like cleaning the kennels or something?
Oh, sorry, the kennels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can bathe the dog if you want. We can show you how to do that too. They always need it. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I know. I personally wouldn't be opposed to learning how to like bathe them, because some of them totally need it on the weekends after like getting dirty in the water, pools and whatnot. So just saying.
Okay.
Maybe we can have Lindsay and Linda do like a dog bathing training for staff. I mean, for volunteers, and then you can just say, hey, can we bathe this dog? And we'll say yes, and then it'll be fresh and clean.
Yeah, thank you so much for offering that, Emily. That's so sweet. And just historically speaking, like right now we have our lovely Pat McVie. She comes in certain days of the week and cleans cats with animal care, which is great. But historically speaking, having volunteers helping with cleaning just hasn't been a big thing at most municipal shelters. That's more of what they help with over socializing animals, at least from what I've seen. But for us, because we need that regular schedule, we just find that we don't have as many volunteers that can commit to that, which is why we don't have it as a regular thing that's offered or a schedule that you can sign up for. Because for us, it's so essential that it gets done at a certain time every day. But absolutely, we would love if there's things that you think that you want to help with, be it, cleaning, enrichment, I'm trying to think of other things. There's so many things. I mean, our volunteers do our landscaping outside. So there's so many volunteer areas that people can help with. All of it is appreciated and needed. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
There's another thing that I would like to, ask for help is transporting animals. We send animals to, like rabbits, to exotic pets or exotic vet in Scotts Valley. you know, oftentimes when we have other shelters or rescue organizations that can take animals from us, we need transport. Like tomorrow, I have 6 cats that need to come from the Watsonville shelter to go to the SPCA because they're able to take some cats for us. So that's something that in the morning, I'm probably going to put a call out to say, hey, any volunteers that can help with this transport, fantastic. Next week, I might have a dog that needs to go to like Chico to get back to a rescue that he originally came from. Might need help with that. You know, you'll see those things on the group's IO. I don't know how it works now. I just know I can still send out a message. That's Megan's thing. Sorry. But yeah, if you are able to transport animals, that's a huge help. Even if it's just from Watsonville to here, that helps us a lot because oftentimes we have to, one of us has to stop what we're doing and go get the animals, or we have to have an officer go get the animals because they need to get moved down here. So
Great. Okay, I think we should conclude this meeting.
yes,
I really, I really appreciate everyone's participation, and I'll figure out how to post the link to this for anyone if you want to share it with volunteers that you talk with, or whatever the situation is. But thank you all so much for all you do, and let's keep this conversation going. This isn't just something that we talk about one time and then never gets brought up again. We get super busy, but we want to still be having these conversations. So while we might not be able to set aside 2 hours, you know, to do a meeting like this, we can absolutely come out and chat with you in a yard, or you can come and set up time to talk with us in our offices. Okay?
yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
I'm always open to answering any questions about any animal anytime that I'm here. Yeah, I like talking about it. I like discussing it with volunteers because it's kind of a education standpoint for me also, that I can explain, you know, this is why we do this and this is why we have to do this. And so I'm always open to talk.
And we'd love to see you all out in the yard. If I know you're like 101% in front of your computer, but if you ever have a break and could come out into the yard,
Oh yeah, I definitely try to, especially when I see
you out there
with
just
dogs.
wandering around.
If I see you
What's
guys
that?
out with dogs and I need to do dog to dogs, I'm always like, hey, you guys want to meet this dog? You want to meet this
Awesome.
dog? To get my
Love it.
evaluations done. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.